Hi, my name is Evelina Silveira with Diversity at Work Communications Training. And if you're like me, you're a news junkie. And sadly, I have heard so many tragic stories lately of the experiences of international students, and in particular, those arriving in Ontario. Whether that is unaffordable housing, whether it is fraudulent educational practices, private colleges that don't really exist or don't deliver what they advertise. Or it might be a case of being unprepared for the demands of school here. But in any case, what we see is tragic on so many levels. I believe there's a statistic that I read recently that there are approximately 2 international students in Brampton every year, or pardon me, every month, who take their life as a result of the stress. And I wanted to share with you a perspective that you might not often hear. And it's probably because what I'm going to talk about today is not so politically correct. But I think it's necessary that we do talk about it. And I hope that this presentation that I'm offering you today will not only help those international students who will be hearing this, but also I hope that their instructors in their country of origin will listen to this too, because I believe it can help you prepare your students to be more successful in Canada. Now, I've worked with post-secondary educational institutions now for about 20 years. And I've been in the field of diversity training for 20 years, and I've done work with about 6 different post-secondary educational institutions, helping them with customer service and as it relates to dealing with international students. So over the years, I've held different kinds of trainings and focus groups where instructors would talk about some of those challenges. And mind you, those focus groups were some time ago, and I don't think that they would be so open to talking about it right now. But I believe that the content of those, the content and their observations are still relevant, especially when I see that the success rate is not as high as we would like to see that with the international student graduations. So I want to talk about that a bit, and I'm coming at this from a few perspectives as a diversity trainer, as somebody who is also an ESL language coach, and someone who also strongly believes in mediation and ways to remedy different conflicts or situations that arise. So my perspective, again, is something that you probably don't hear every day, but nevertheless, we need to consider it because we're talking about student lives. We're talking about investments that their families make in their success here, and a whole range of different offshoots that can happen when things go awry here. So the first issue that professors and instructors have often talked about is that international students, some of them don't often have the English language proficiencies that are required to be successful in the classroom. And you might say, well, how is that? Because after all, they have to take TEFL tests and other tests to ensure that they can do the work. Well, sometimes it could be that there might be fraudulent testing that happens, and we know that there was a case of that. I'm not saying that that's all the case, okay, but we did have that situation where a bunch of international students were sent back once they found out that their assessments were fraudulent. It could be that one day they do a good test, and then somehow the next time they are asked to put it into action, it doesn't meet the requirements that the instructor has laid out. it's hard to say, or perhaps those English language levels need to be raised to be more successful, especially when you're looking at courses that involved a lot of writing and speaking. The other is instructors have talked about how they see Canadian students as being more independent and learning independently, and that's what they strive for. In that international students often require a lot more help to get them going, extra resources, extra help, tutoring, and that they are not paid to do that necessarily, or that's not part of their job, and that there's an expectation that they should already come to the classes with this information. The other part is that although there might be support services available in these different post-secondary institutions, they're usually flooded with people, or it might be just too much for someone to take in such a brief period of time to learn, for instance, how to do research in a 6-week program and implement it perfectly after that is kind of difficult to do, and I would say unreasonable. So we see a difference here with the role of the instructor or teacher cross-culturally. And you know what? I've heard this before too. I coach a lot of clients of mine are in China, and they will tell me about the special relationship that they have with their teacher when they were, whether it was in university or high school, that they had a sort of a mentoring role. And that was as a result of the student trying to achieve a certain score on an exam. And as a result of that, the teacher works very closely with the students and gets to know them more. And there's a mentoring that comes along with that, and a relationship, okay, that sometimes that goes beyond just the course, where they become could be like a family friend, a mentor as they move along, and so forth. So it is a very valuable relationship, one that goes beyond just that classroom time of, let's say, 2 hours. So you can see that in itself could be very much of a culture shock experience when an instructor tells the person that no, they can't stay after class and go over something with them, that they need to do that on their own, or give them a website or a book to read. Okay, so there is a big variance right there. And then, so you're talking about students also who are, I said, being prepared for exams. Okay, that's a different type of learning than what we see a lot here. We do have exams. Usually that's maybe 30 or 40% of a person's mark. But then we have all of this group work that's involved, or presentations, oral presentations, group projects, role plays. All of that takes a high level of English proficiency, and in some cases also an understanding of Canadian culture. And that takes a while to understand too. So there are some soft skills that the international student has to automatically learn that are culturally relevant, and that can only happen with time. Then we see the other things that come up too. For instance, cheating and plagiarism. And I think that cheating has become far more sophisticated now, and everybody's kind of doing it, I think. With the advent of technology, I mean, that was an issue that came up there, and different values around cheating. But most of all, plagiarism is a challenge. And when you think about that, if your educational system was largely based on studying for exams, then you wouldn't have a lot of experience necessarily with writing research papers unless you were in particular disciplines. And maybe that would be, or at a thesis level or so forth. Okay. So there's a whole lot of learning that is involved in studying plagiarism and how to footnote, how citations and all of that. And as we can see, even in a most recent example with Dr. Claudine Gay from Harvard University, for some people, even well-educated people in English, they don't necessarily understand or follow those rules. So that can take a long time to learn. And to put that into practice flawlessly is a difficult feat to master, I think, when you are coming into a new culture and institution for the first time. You know, in Canadian educational systems, we often have a lot of emphasis on creative pursuits too, in the work in assignments. As I mentioned, role plays, presentations, self-reflection exercises, critical thinking, where you have an opportunity to disagree with an instructor. And what does that look like? And writing about that. What we do know is that there are not enough supports for international students, I think, to be successful in academically, I think, especially if English is not their first language. And I believe that one of the ways that we can mitigate the risk and improve the quality of the student's experience, as well as the level of instruction at post-secondary institutions, is for instance, prior to students coming to Canada, if there is a streaming program that is implemented with their country of origin that allows students to choose the stream of them going to another educational institution, let's say in the West, where they can study these different areas that I talked about, for instance, plagiarism, doing oral presentations, refutations, and so forth. And then they are practicing it many times before they come to a Western environment. And that will take some restructuring, but I believe it will create a much less stressful environment for the student, as well as create an opportunity for them to be far more successful and really derive benefits from their family's investments, a huge investment in their education. So I believe that we need to look at this in a very holistic way and a proactive way, instead of believing that all of those needs are going to be met by the support services in post-secondary educational institutions. I don't think that that's realistic. And whatever students can do to hone those skills before they come to an Ontario university or college will only benefit them. If you'd like to learn more about the work that we do at Diversity at Work Communications Training, please visit www.diversityatworkcommunications.com, and you'll learn a lot about what I do in terms of customer service training. Thank you. Bye-bye.